It is Wednesday, December the 3rd.
This is The Warning.
And there is great news this morning. MAGA is falling apart. The evidence of that is perfectly clear from the results of the special election in the 7th District of Tennessee. The Democratic candidate was Tennessee State Representative Afton Bain. Now, she fell short in this race by what looks to be 4 or 5 points. May get a little bit closer. But this is a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points a little over 1 year ago. The corrupt corporate media that seeks to demonstrate an equilibrium between insanity and patriotism by covering any of this as normal has beguiled the American people into believing that a great many more of us support this, the insanity, than we actually do. Donald Trump's approval numbers are collapsing at a record pace to record low levels. His approval numbers are at 35%. Now, I predicted the trajectory of this over the course of the year, and he's going to get into the 20s before very much longer. Let's look at some of the scenes from the cabinet meeting yesterday.
I took my physical. I got all A's, everything. But they said to me, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, is it hard? They said, yes. I said, well, I'm a very smart person. Who was the last president to take one? No president has ever agreed to take one. Because when you get into the mid-questions, meaning, 10, question number 10, 11, 12, 28, 30, they get harder and harder.
They are like a sketch from a Saturday Night Live where everybody, including the audience, is on an acid trip. And here we have the slumbering Trump between little Marco.
But this war is going on, and the president is trying to end it, not because, listen, we got a million things to focus on in the world as a country, but he's the only leader in the world that can help end it. And that's why even as we speak to you now, Steve Woodcock is in Moscow trying to find a way to end this war, to save lives of 9,000 people, Mr. President, as you know, are dying every week.
Let's watch Pete Hegseth.
You didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded in fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes, about the judgment that they made. I wrote a whole book on this topic because of what politicians and the press does to warfighters.
Not for nothing, the sign that hangs above the entrance at Quantico, Virginia, where he gave his infamous speech to the generals, the sign above the entrance to the Marine Corps Officer Candidate School says, Ductos exemplos, lead by example. Look at this buffoon, tattooed from head to toe with Christian nationalist totems, advised by a sick pastor who believes women shouldn't vote and that slavery was good for blacks. Pete Hegseth is incompetent. Pete Hegseth is immoral. He lacks restraint, he lacks control, he lacks judgment, but he used to have a different position, at least when it came to war crimes. Here's Pete Hegseth way back when. The internet's a great thing, isn't it?
There are some guys at Leavenworth who made really bad choices on the battlefield. And I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do.
Now, Hakeem Jeffries said he's against and impeachment of Pete Hegseth. On what basis and why? Now, what is clear from Tennessee is that soon the Democratic Party will have a toehold by virtue of holding a majority in the House of Representatives. It is entirely possible the Democrats will hold a Senate majority. That majority cannot be purposeless and it cannot be meaningless. It must stand for constant confrontation in the name of the right against right and wrong. And the wrongs of this moment are clear. They involved masked men targeting immigrant populations for abuse, guided by a president engaged in fascistic and dehumanizing rhetoric that is precisely of the nature that Goebbels used. Steve Witkoff is selling out Ukraine in Moscow because there's opportunity for Trump to enrich himself in corrupt deals. The gateway to World War III is through that corruption. The abuses are constant, the lying ever more so, and in this moment, there must be a commitment as it all starts to fall apart on the part of Democratic leaders that they will use their power to confront the abuses of power. And so for Hakeem Jeffries, who says in the middle of a crisis where it's clear the defense secretary has become a war criminal, that the right approach here is to follow the example of Merrick Garland and do nothing. The purpose of a Democratic majority, above all others, must be this: the restoration of the co-equality of the Article 1 branch of government and assertion of power by the Congress to the executive that ceases the lawlessness and the abuses of the executive of the president. So no, Hakeem Jeffries saying there will be no impeachment of Pete Hegseth is not the right thing to do. It is the wrong thing. And more importantly, it is an abdication of duty, because duty will require not just the impeachment of Pete Hegseth, but the impeachment of Robert Kennedy, the impeachment of the lawless Kristi Noem, who has violated court orders and is as corrupt as the day is long. It will mean the impeachment of Pam Bondi, the lawless attorney general, the agent of Trump who was covering up the Epstein files. It will mean the impeachment of Kash Patel. It will mean that stands must be made on principle for the country. Everybody who cares about the country needs to vote Democratic in November of 2026. But every Democrat who wins need not vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be their leader. A do-nothing Democratic majority may be even worse than a poisonous MAGA majority, because it will be the gateway to the jackboot coming down on all of us for the last time. A Democratic majority must have purpose, it must have meaning, it must have conviction, and it must be ready to act, to conduct oversight, to root out the corruption, to inform the American people of what has happened during the 2 terrible years when we had no Congress, just a tyrant consolidating power. The moment when Donald Trump will be put back on his leash is coming fast. Problem is, Hakeem Jeffries looks at Donald Trump and he thinks that dog, well, he's an off-leash type of guy. And that is just plain dumb. It's time to put the muzzle on these people. And what that means is using power, using subpoenas, using investigative authority to inform the people who are the bosses of those corrupt politicians exactly what it is that they did in our name. That is what this next election must be about. Afton Bain took a stand in Tennessee in a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points. She lost by an inch. The redistricting nonsense is over everywhere. Republicans will be retiring in droves. The path is clear: drown in the tsunami or retire on dry land. But voters, independents, all of us who are part of the coalition of opposition must demand something. What we want are not laid down Schumercrats. What we want are fighting Democrats. What we want is something like this. And so I'll close today with the words of Mark Kelly rebuking Donald Trump and rebuking Pete Hegseth the way it ought to be done.
He runs around on a stage like he's a 12-year-old playing Army. And it is ridiculous. It is embarrassing. And I can't imagine what our allies think of looking at that guy in this job, one of the most important jobs in our country. In my view, after the President of the United States, it is the next most important job. He is in the National Command Authority for Nuclear Weapons. And last night, he's putting out on the internet turtles with rocket-propelled grenades. Have you seen this? This is the Secretary of Defense. This is not a serious person. He should have been fired after Signalgate. And then every single day after that.
I'm Steve Schmidt. This is The Warning. I invite you to join this community where I promise to be honest, blunt, and direct about what is happening in this country. America is in crisis. Follow and subscribe to this channel and on Substack. Thank you.